Hello, sociology kids. It's Mr. Slomka here, and I am going to talk to you today about one of our first kind of big exciting lessons that we have, which is on one of our first kind of famous sociologists. And the name of this lesson is My Name is Auguste. We're going to do four of these in total, and it's going to be the first of those four. And they're going to kind of build in importance, this one being one of the least important ones, and then we'll build up from there. So, why are we starting off with Augusta here if he is not so very important as all the other ones? And that is because of this right here. Auguste Comte is known as the inventor of the term sociology. And so you can't have sociology with having some terms. I know we've talked about it before, but we're going to talk about it again. Sociology is one of the sciences that invents the most terminology. So it makes sense that we would start off with the man who invented the term in the first place. And so that is Augusta here. Let's talk a little bit about his early life. So to begin with, he is a child of the Revolution. He was born in France in 1798. And around that time, the end of the 1700s and the beginning of the 1800s was when there was the French Revolution, the scientific revolution, the Industrial Revolution was all occurring all in the same time. And Augusta was from France, so all of that was swirling around him constantly at the same time. And so that was a big deal, even to the point where the year 1798 that he was born in was debatable for a time, because when the French Revolution occurred about 4 years before, they instituted a French revolutionary calendar. So the year that he was born was based off of a different calendar that was used before and now isn't used anymore. So that is a very, very, very contentious kind of fact and a strange little situation to even begin with. He was born to a royal tax official, and both of his parents were devout Catholics, which is interesting because throughout Augusta's life, he just completely and totally rebelled against both of those ideas. A lot of that had to do with the French Revolution. The French Revolution was definitely a revolution of politics. The idea of royalty and being in control was being thrown out, and the idea of democracy was being kind of ushered in a very violent and deadly type of way. And the ideas that went along with religion, and specifically Catholicism, were also experiencing the same kinds of pieces. The scientific revolution had kind of already occurred a little bit more, was a little bit more established. And that just brought in the idea of scientific thought and scientific method being used, as opposed to just accepting things as phenomena or magic in the world and just saying, yep, that's why that it is. It's a religious reason. There's a God who's angry or a God that's happy. And then moving on from there, science was trying to explain some of those things. And then the last one is the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution is something that ended the agrarian civilization, which meant that most people just lived with their families, doing their very best to grow the food for themselves, make the clothes for themselves, build houses for themselves, and could allow people to move to the cities while other few farmers made all the food and shipped it into the cities. And that created a lot more complicated society, and that was definitely something that drew Augusta's eye. He embraced the scientific revolution, and he strived to use its methods to better understand and utilize the industrialized society that he found himself in. He enjoyed being in the city. Once he found his way to Paris, he did not want to leave. He liked that a lot, and the society that existed around that. Comte did a really great job of navigating around some of the more violent topics of politics and religion. And he was a great synthesizer. He brought a lot of different kind of disparaging ideas together, and was able to kind of avoid being a target in some of those aspects. And even when it came to religion, one of the things he did is he almost immediately gave up his parents' Catholic ways. And in order to find a religion that would work well for everyone, to kind of synthesize what would be best for everyone, is he invented his own religion later on in life called the Religion of Humanity. And that really just focused on science and logic and philosophy and the betterment of the human race. The current modern human race at that. So once again, a great synthesizer of ideas. Right now, let's take a little pause for the causes video on the Google Classroom about the Industrial Revolution so you can get a little bit more of a taste of what was going on with that. Okay, now if you're joining me again after that Industrial Revolution video, next thing I wanted to talk to you about was his education. So before the Industrial Revolution, when Auguste was a young boy, the idea of education was not a given. It wasn't something that everybody was just expected to get, like is true for you. So to attend school, you had to be from an affluent family, an elite family, and Auguste was. His father being that tax official, he was able to go through private schools when he was in Montpelier, which is his hometown. And then there he studied mathematics. But he also spent a lot of time reading about philosophy and history, which are passions of his. I think that this is a really important thing because it kind of highlights that whole right-brained, left-brained thing that makes him so brilliant and some of these other more famous sociologists so brilliant. Instead of just being focused on the creativity of philosophy or the humanity that's found in history, he also has that more technical side to him that is focused on mathematics. And you're going to find that kind of interesting balance happening a lot with a lot of these sociologists. They're more than capable of kind of flipping over between their right brain side and their left brain side, which is something that everybody is capable of, even though most people seem to find that they're more comfortable working with one side than they are the other. Auguste also, like I had mentioned earlier, he found his way to Paris, and he found his way to Paris by attending a Polytechnic Academy. And he was supposed to be studying mathematics there, but the school was shut down by the royal Bourbon family only 2 years in, and that wasn't a big deal for Auguste. He had already found his way to Paris. He had already made some allies there, and he really kind of jumped into the next portion of his life, where he started to write articles and publish things like his courses on positivism, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and that really kind of set the rest of his life off in a different kind of direction. Next, positivism. This is one of two big ideas that Auguste is kind of credited with. And so positivism is a big idea. It's a really big one that is definitely larger than sociology as a study. He was a big thinker. And so positivism is an idea to use those the concepts of the scientific revolution, like the scientific method, to study and explain the phenomena that occur in the world. And so that is all the phenomena. So what is going to be occurring around you in the city, out in nature, physics, chemistry, all of those kinds of things. One of the things that Auguste believed strongly in was that there was no absolute truths out there, but science was the only way to get closer to what is the truth. And so you had to continually be studying, and your society needed to be continually making progress, making forward motion. And that was the most important piece, making that progress and making that forward motion, even if that end goal was never really in sight. The other important thing that, like I had mentioned earlier, is that not only was he a student of mathematics, but he was also well-read in philosophy. And his idea of his positivism was framed as a philosophy, but it had branches that were mathematics and chemistry and physics and biology. And so that kind of, once again, synthesized and brought all of those different ideas together that were usually separated, especially the idea of philosophy and some of those more technical ideas of science. But to bring them all together was what made positivism so interesting. And also the big thing is that even though he was thinking about this as a big idea, the idea of the social dimension of bringing society into that was always something that he was circling around and of great interest to him, which brings us to the other one, big idea that we had talked about earlier. To finish this up, though, one of the most important things that Auguste was looking for was he was always seeking morality. He was always trying to find the good and the right, and moving towards that kind of goal. And the last thing to think about here is that this idea of positivism was wildly popular. It spread far and wide. It spread to the Americas. It spread across the world. In fact, it spread so far and that there were so many like followers of positivism, and Auguste kind of reached a level of celebrity that after he had left the Polytechnic school and had published some of these papers, he struggled to find employment, and he was just basically funded and backed by these fans of his positivism. And they would just pay his way, pay his rent, buy him food, get him the money that he needed so that he could continue to live and continue to write and continue to provide lectures on this idea that they were so enamored with. Here's a little slide right here that describes positivism in a little bit of a different way, which I think is definitely positive. You want to try to get as many views as possible. It's an approach to the study of society that relies specifically on scientific evidence, such as experiments and statistics, to reveal a true nature of how society operates. And so you can see that idea of science, like chemistry and biology and physics there, with the idea of experiments. You can also see the mathematics coming in with statistics. And you can definitely see that societal element as well, kind of coming together to make one big idea. And this is kind of Auguste's main big idea. The last thing that we got to bring up is his term, sociology. So sociology is the study of groups of people, the study of the society. And Auguste's main idea here was that society should be studied in the same scientific manner as nature is. So if you're studying, atoms, or if you're studying the motion of objects, or if you're studying trees or animals or anything like that, and you are just so curious and so devoted to it, your society that you live in should be studied with that same type of devotion and focus and technical skill, because Auguste believed that sociology was in fact a science and needed to be treated in like a technical and quantitative manner. So he was looking for data, numbers, things that could be written down, not just feelings or emotions that could change over time. There you go. That is a little bit of our introduction to our very first famous sociologist, Auguste Comte. And in order to kind of get us ready for our next one, the next thing that I'd like you to do is read an article that I think you might be able to find a little bit of connection with. The article is Putting Teen-Parent Conflicts into Perspective. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that article and relating it to our second famous sociologist when we talk again tomorrow.